we talk about George Floyd, we talk about Philando Castile, we talk about all the Black men that have been murdered by cops or by citizens, many times children, and then no justice comes. And then we talk about police officers that do it also to Black men as well. And as a Black man, a straight Black man, there's always a bit of a tug of war within me to be like, yes, I understand this is what's happening with us. We're forgetting Black women. We're forgetting LGBTQ plus Black folks. We're forgetting the trans community. That epidemic is exploding right now. Not even right now. It's always been the situation. But as we see this happen, I just wonder if you guys are feeling that same press on you, that we're kind of forgetting many other people and their experiences that are within this community that is very much inclusive.
Jayar, I'm sorry, Adrienne, I'm gonna go ahead and take this because you bring up LGBTQ plus and you bring up trans. Since 2013, per the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, close to, I would say, documented and accounted for close to 165 people of the trans experience have been murdered violently, right? And so now we're seeing this intersection and this rally and this battle cry for trans lives matters, because they are too a part of the Black experience. And the reason why I think that people haven't been talking about trans is because in the LGBTQ plus conversation, to normal people, the poster children for LGBT have normally been gay white men with muscles and that very all-American, if you will, version of the gay man has always been white. So take the dehumanization of the trans community that's been going on for decades. It starts with an anti-trans stigma that starts from unacceptance in the home, and it trickles down to socioeconomical, not being able to get jobs, then them being homeless. It's a whole myriad of different things that have been affecting this group of people who have been screaming at the top of their lungs, see us, hear us, be there for us, protect us. 4 out of 5 trans people murdered are Black trans women. Black trans women. They need to be protected ferociously and fiercely. So when I talk to my trans brothers and sisters about Black Lives Matter, they are there fighting along with their non-LGBTQ plus Black brothers and sisters. But it's like, when are we showing up for them? And that's been what the conversation has been in the last 2 weeks. There's trauma all around. We're trauma, and people laugh at me when I say trauma, but what has happened in the last 3 weeks has been beyond traumatizing, let alone we move through the world and have to internalize that trauma as Black people. Imagine the added layer of being LGBTQ plus, not accepted, then being dehumanized for being trans and not being accepted. Also, when these people are murdered and found or investigated, they are dead named. They're not being able to be identified by their new trans experience name, because they're still being referred to as the dead name. And for those watching, dead name is their birth name given to them before they became part of the trans experience. So those conversations have been so deep, so intense. Ashley Marie Preston, who has been on the Turks many times, me and her had a really deep conversation on my show, Jason Unleashed, and it's just about visibility, and now more than ever, that visibility is definitely needed in this fight for Black Lives Matter.
Yes, Adrienne.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree without question. To the issue of the Black experience, we often see that Black women are left behind, and we saw that with Breonna Taylor, and we're also seeing that in the fact that the officers who are responsible for her death have not been arrested, even though one has been fired. And of course, it's the one who's been accused multiple times of sexual assault. But the reality is, since the beginning of time, Black women have been at the bottom of the totem pole, and they've been treated accordingly. And with that comes the worst of the burdens among people in the Black community. And we suffer and we feel them, and we experience every aspect of them the worst. If we are raped, if we are beaten, if we are, experiencing any type of injustice, the chances of us getting justice are very, very rare, very slim. And yet we are supposed to continue to persist and uplift Black men. And oftentimes there's the conversation of, when are you going to show up for us? When are we going to address misogynoir? When are we going to address domestic violence? All of these things that go on that impact us, and looking for people to show up and back us, as opposed to dismiss, rob, rape, and steal from us. And so the Black woman experience, it hasn't necessarily been the jam, even though we make it look good.
Well, that's part of the hard part. And then there's varying levels of where people are accepted in society, and then we find ourselves, black men, straight black men, find ourselves a lot of times targets, but then also at the same time accepted in some arenas. In the workplace, there's points when people want to say, oh, they do like the tall, good-looking black guy standing next to them because it makes the collective group look more diverse, makes us look better. And there's an acceptance level that does come, and then we do get somewhere because of it. As bad as that is, because as bad as the reasonings are behind it, those things aren't given to these other groups. And so within our own community, sometimes you will see the straight black guy talk down on trans men and women in our community, to women, obviously, and you won't see that pushback the same way. We're getting all of the attention for things that we're struggling with, but we don't always like to give it up that direction. And it's a bit of a societal move. You want to kind of find your place on the totem pole, as you mentioned, Adrienne, and you don't want to be on the bottom. So we end up finding ourselves mistreating people the same way and not realizing we're contributing to the very problem that we're fighting against, that we say we're fighting against.
I mean, and there is where the rubber meets the road. I'm glad you brought that up, Jayar, because that's a conversation that we're having now. It's like, okay, we want to be on the front lines fighting for equality against, and I always liken this to the Avengers. We are the Avengers assembling to fight Thanos, right? And Thanos is like 45, everything else that is really crappy in the world, we're all assembling to fight that. But yet, in our own community, we are the worst to each other. You mentioned about being the straight black male that gets a pass and is somewhat the accessory. But there's been many times where that straight black male will look at the gay black male and be like, oh, you are not black enough. You are less than because you are attracted to the same sex. And we know that's ingrained throughout the black culture for back in slave days. Mm-hmm. They would pit men against each other to test their masculinity. And all you had back then was your masculinity and protecting that and protecting your families. So, I mean, that only heightened and lends itself to more of a struggle for us, because if we can't be for us, by us, how can anyone else support us as well, if that makes sense? And you mentioned black experience. That has been a lot of my black experience as well. I didn't grow up in a predominantly black neighborhood or a predominantly black community, being from Albuquerque, New Mexico. There's not a lot of us there. Okay, so there isn't. So in my adulthood, finally immersing myself into greater black places and more black spaces, I've been able to really have fresh eyes and see some of those problems that still are very much prevalent. Homophobia is still very much prevalent in the black community. I've gone to churches in bigger cities where they have no problem calling attention to the LGBTQ plus and saying this is wrong, saying, you don't want to be like those over there that are sinning with laying in bed, two men laying in bed together, a sin openly in 2019, 2018, and 2020. So those are some of the things that we have to address, and we're always turning a blind eye to.
And, it's something I really want to bring up, Jason. How dare you bring up the Avengers? There was no black woman in there. When you had a choice, you could have thrown down the X-Men.
X-Men.
Okay? But that's fine. But like Jason, I too grew up in a community where there were few black people. And then when I did have the opportunity to be around black people, I wasn't black enough. So it was getting rejected on both ends. But I always found it to be so incredible by virtue of the fact that I really felt like, hey, I'm a lot blacker than you are, because I'm surrounded by people every day that let me know I'm an other. Every day, every experience I have, being afraid, feeling like you don't fit in or belong, dealing with Confederate flags, people putting for sale signs on my lawn, being told I'm not taking a black girl to prom. All of these experiences on a daily basis that I would not necessarily have had to encounter had I grown up in a black community. So it's one of those things where we need to work on embracing one another, regardless of the way in which we speak or our background necessarily, because the reality is the world are going to see us as the Negro, no matter where we come from and no matter how much money we have.
Boom. So thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, Jayar. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.